your exam, the examiner will something is coming in between. I can proceed. Yeah.
Someone talking, ma'am?
No, this call is not being recorded or some message like that is coming.
Okay, okay, ma'am. You can proceed.
Okay. Previous one. So the examiner, whoever is coming, they will see whether you are checking the height of the fundus of the uterus after correction of the dextrorotation. Okay, in your clinical classes, it will be taught to you. So that way, while examining the height of the fundus to say how many weeks the pregnant uterus is, you have to correct the dextrorotation. And so automatically the cervix will be going to the left. And another important concept is the concept of the lower uterine segment. So as you know, there is a space called as the isthmus in a non-pregnant uterus between the anatomical and the histological internal os. Now this portion becomes larger and larger and is called as a lower uterine segment. Now this is the segment where we are putting the lower uterine segment in the incision for cesarean section. That is why it is called as LSCS. Okay, so it is a lower segment cesarean section where we are putting the incision on this portion of the uterus, because this is least vascular, very thin. And as you see, as the pregnancy advances, the size of this lower uterine segment also becomes more and more. While the upper portion of the uterus, that is the fundus, it becomes thicker and thicker because it has to contract and push the baby down. The lower uterine segment becomes thin for us to put a, that is the importance of the. So you have two types of contractions. So somebody might ask you, what is labor pain? So labor pains means contraction of the uterus where there is a change in the cervix also, where the cervix will undergo effacement and dilatation. But what is Braxton Hicks contraction? This is physiological. That is, it is a painless contraction. Patient won't feel anything. But when you do a bimanual pelvic examination in early pregnancy, probably you will just feel the uterus. See, all these things, no, you people little unfortunate because of this COVID situation. Actually, when you are in the labor ward, when you feel the uterus, when you keep your hand on the pregnant uterus, sometimes you will find it soft. But at the next moment, you may find it to become suddenly hard. And this is because of this intermittent contraction of the uterus. But as long as it is not associated with cervical changes, we don't call it as labor pains. We give it the name Braxton Hicks contraction, which you may feel throughout the pregnancy. And some of the characteristic features, you can see the slide. The intrauterine pressure is less than 8 millimeter. This and all you don't have to remember much, but just remember what is this actually. This is again a physiological contraction. Then of course the uterine vessels, the most important thing, because they are going to carry all the blood from the to the mother, inside the mother's body as well as to the fetus. So the blood vessels tend to become tortuous, dilated, enlarged. The walls undergo hypertrophy, hyperplasia, and they become low resistance vessels so that more blood can flow. And estrogen plays a major part in this change. Okay. And here other thing what I want to tell you is, all of you see in obstetrics, many things are felt, seen, and then learnt. Okay. So you can know what is the change only when you know how it feels when the patient is not pregnant. So in the gynec OP, suppose you do a pervaginal examination, how does the cervix feel? The cervix usually tends to be long, like tubular, and firm in consistency because of the elastic fibers. Okay. But during pregnancy, what happens? The same patient, suppose you see her when she becomes pregnant, you will find that the cervix is very soft in consistency. And as the pregnancy advances, the length of the cervix becomes shorter. And one more thing is, the patient may complain to you. She may say, Doctor, I'm having lot of discharge per vaginum during pregnancy. She may even say that something watery is going on. So you don't know whether she is leaking the amniotic fluid or something else. But how do you differentiate? A good way to do that is to do a speculum examination. And normally, physiologically, what happens is Just like everything else, the cervical glands also, they will hypertrophy and hyperplasia will be there. So you know that vagina does not have any glands. So whatever is coming through the vagina and the vulva is coming from the cervix only. So because of the hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the cervical glands, you have lot of secretions during pregnancy. Usually how they are actually somewhat fully whitish and they will be watery also. And apart from that, the mucus secretion also is more. And that mucus plug only during the process of labor, finally it comes out as show. Otherwise, what it does, it occludes the cervical canal and acts as a physical barrier. So vulva, okay, of course, increase vascularity and varicosity. That is just a finding, right? Next. Okay, so these are all things that you have to see and appreciate. The patient may not really give you any complaint. So when you look at the vagina, because of the increased vascularity, it may be bluish, soft, moist, and that the name of the sign is Jacquemus sign. Ovary, of course, then pelvic ligaments. This is again very important. There is relaxation of all the pelvic joints and the ligaments because all these things, they help in the when the labor pain starts, especially the pelvic joints, they become very relaxed so that there is more space for the baby to come out during the normal labor. Then the breast changes. Again, the breast is getting ready for the lactation and milk secretion for the baby. So as I told you earlier, all the changes are oriented towards the baby and for the baby. So here you have the accentuation of the nipple and the areola. Yes, next. And the sebaceous glands also, they become more of, for secretion of the milk and they become very prominent. So they are called as the Montgomery's tubercles. And there, 1 minute, go back. Here there is a clinical matter to be discussed. So during pregnancy, see as you see the slide, by about 12 weeks, there is a colostrum secretion. And by 16 weeks, it may become thick and yellowish. Okay. So when should you become cautious? You have to become cautious if the same secretion becomes milky. Because when the same secretion becomes milky and patient says, எனக்கு பால் மாதிரி வருது, like that if she tells you, that means the patient is going in for some placental insufficiency, which may even be followed by IUD. So it is very important. Suppose she says there is a secretion, you have to have a look at what is the type of secretion that is coming out, whether it is normal or abnormal. Okay, next. Right. So skin changes again because definitely when it is coming on the face, the patient may approach you. She may say, see, you can see the picture very clearly shows. That is because again, because of the estrogen, progesterone and the increased melanocyte stimulating hormone. So she may have the chloasma gravidarum, increased the pregnancy marks on the face, especially the cheeks and the nose. Then stria gravidarum, very important because you may think that it is normal. For a lot of ladies, it can be really very distressing because what happens is, why do these marks come actually? Because of stretching of the skin. So cosmetically, it becomes very important because these stria, they don't really go away. During pregnancy, they are pinkish. And after pregnancy, after they deliver, what happens is they remain as whitish strands. So ladies may be very much cosmetically, they may not like it. So what can you do about it? Nothing much. You can ask them to massage some good oil and all that so that at least a little bit it doesn't become very prominent. And another thing is, though it is not mentioned here, some of them, when they have more of the striae, they have severe itching also on the abdominal wall, which is again physiological. You just have to give them some local application of calamine and things like that because there may be severe itching. Patient may say, I'm not able to tolerate that. So both cosmetic reasons, in today's world, you have to look at the cosmetic things also because the patient may not like to have these things. You cannot completely avoid them, but you can minimize. Fine, next one. Right, this is again clinically very, very important. Skeletal changes. So a pregnant lady comes to you and she tells you, doctor, I'm having a severe back pain. So as you can see, the lumbar lordosis is going on increasing as the pregnancy advances. So you know very well, when there is any change in the shape of the spinal cord, it will tend to pull at the muscles that are attached and also press on the nerves that are coming out through the vertebral column. So all this will lead to pain. What can you do during pregnancy? Nothing much. You can't give her too many tablets also, but probably some good physiotherapy who is trained under an orthopedic surgeon's guidance. They are also not going to do much, but they will tell you how to relax these muscles and be as comfortable as possible. And anteriorly, this is posteriorly. Anteriorly, I told you the pelvic joints and also the pubic symphysis, they tend to relax. Some people have severe pain. In fact, the pubic symphysis separates to so much extent that they may have to wear a what do you call that? Some supporting structure and all that. So you have to give her some good physiotherapy so that she undergoes the delivery and later sees whether there is a pathological problem. So again, go back. So as you can see, who is responsible for all this? The progesterone and the relaxing hormones. Okay, eyes, nothing very specific, but this point number 2, see there is edema all over the body during pregnancy, okay? So what happens is the corneal thickness, the people who wear contact lens, because of this increased edema, they may suddenly complain that they have some difficulty. I think this is one of the clinical points. This is the only clinical point, I think so. Yes. Yes, this is very, very important. Weight gain. So, what will you tell a lady? Previously, no, everybody will tell you that a pregnant lady has to gain this much of weight. And what is that weight gain for a person with a normal BMI, pre-pregnancy BMI? If the BMI is normal, then the weight gain will be about 11 kilos. In that first kilo, 1 kilo will be in the first trimester, 5 in the second, and 5 in the third. This is for, suppose the lady is very obese, the BMI is more than 30, and she says, I have not gained weight. Are you going to be bothered? No. So in that situation, you are only going to see whether the baby is growing by doing a clinical examination, seeing the height of the uterus, by doing a scan and all that. You're not going to ask her to become more obese. So basically, the bottom line is that the weight gain during pregnancy should be based on the pre-pregnancy BMI. Suppose she is very thin, you can ask her to have more than 11 kilos also, up to 18 kilos she can undergo. So this slide is just telling you from where all these increased weight is coming from. So the total is 11 to 16 kilos it says. Okay. Right. So the weight gain mainly increases during the second half. So the first 3 months, the lady may tell you, I'm not putting on any weight. So you just reassure her, tell her that as the baby grows, the second and third trimester, she will tend to put on more weight. Yes. Right. So this chart tells you how much a lady can gain based on the pre-pregnancy BMI. This is there in your book. Just go through it. Right. Now this is again very, very important. We are now coming to the physiological changes. Right. So the cardiovascular changes. So everything is based on the fact that the uterus is growing, pushing the diaphragm up. So automatically the heart tends to move to the left. So the apex will shift more laterally. Okay. Then what is the ECG change? Automatically it is the left axis deviation will be there. Then next. So go back. So here let us see what is physiological. I think the most important point here is the physiological tricuspid regurgitation. Okay, so tricuspid regurgitation may not be pathological. If it is mild during pregnancy, you have to interpret it with caution. You should not think that it is pathological. So you get a cardiology opinion whether this is okay for pregnancy or not. Next. Right. So the apex beat automatically goes more to the left. Another physiological change is when you keep a step on the chest of a pregnant lady and you hear a systolic murmur. It may be very much normal. Again, suppose it is a continuous murmur, then it is due to the mammary murmur because of the increased blood flow to the breast. Okay. So these two things you should be able to know. You should not think that it is a systolic murmur during pregnancy. Most of the time it is physiological, whereas a diastolic murmur, mostly it is pathological. So that's what you have to No. Right. So in the cardiovascular system, what are the things that increases? So as you can see, the stroke volume, heart rate, so automatically the cardiac output and the oxygen consumption, everything increases. So why does it increase? Naturally, because through the mother only the baby is going to get the oxygen. So only if the mother's changes are there, she has to eat for herself as well as the baby. She has to breathe for herself as well as the baby. So all these things are increasing. So what falls then? So what you have is the vascular resistance falls. That is because of the effect of the hormones progesterone. So what happens is all the smooth muscles are relaxing all over the body. So the vascular resistance also falls. Now clinically, where is this important? Now when you check the BP of the patient, note this point very much. It will be very low. It may even be 90-60. That time the patient says, doctor, my BP is very low. I'm having low BP. So that time what should you say? You should say you should be very happy that you have a low BP because that is normal for pregnancy. And if you are a very keen, if you are a good clinician, when she is approaching the 5th month, you have to be very, very careful in checking the BP. Suppose a BP of 90-60 has suddenly become 120-80. Even then, for a normal person, it may be a normal value. But for pregnancy, you have to note the point that the BP is on the rise. Because normally during the 5th month, there is a fall in the BP. Normally itself, it may be low. During the 5th month, because of the remodeling of the placenta, actually there should be a fall in the BP. So suppose you find a rise around the 5th month, be careful. She may be proceeding towards gestational hypertension or preeclampsia. Okay, so there is basically a fall in the vascular resistance and hence mainly the diastolic BP. Okay, this is another thing you have to know. A pregnant lady, especially with advanced pregnancy, lies down flat. You're asking her to lie down flat because you want to do a scan. Suddenly she has terrible dizziness. So what do you do? First thing you have to do is to turn her to the lateral position. So immediately you find that she becomes okay. You repeat it and see, it is confirmed. So some of the women may have this supine hypotension syndrome because the gravid uterus is actually, when she is lying down flat, no, in the supine position, it is pressing on the great vessels and hence the cardiac output. The moment you shift her to the lateral position, it becomes okay. Right. Now next. Right. This is another important one, hematological changes. So when you will, this is important because you should know how to interpret anemia in pregnancy. So here you can see that you have to remember only this much. The blood volume increases by 30%. The plasma is 40% increase. RBC is increased only to 20%. So because of this, what happens is you have something called as physiological anemia or dilution because the plasma increases more than the RBC. Now everything is increasing once again to carry more oxygen to the fetus, but it is not proportionate. So especially in the second trimester, though what is the definition of anemia in pregnancy? It is less than 11 gram percent. But in the second trimester, because of lot of dilution, you take the cutoff to be about. Okay, so here the iron metabolism and other things, the formation of hemoglobin is given. But I think this much, if you remember, it is enough. That is the process of dilution and how you have to interpret. Now, as you can see, the iron need during pregnancy increases like anything because one, the more of RBCs have to be produced, and also the increased blood that is present in the placenta is a great storehouse of blood. So for all these things, you require the increased iron. And so what happens is iron absorption increase. 3% of oral iron is absorbed. This is another point you must have read in biochemistry. It becomes very important during pregnancy. So the iron concentration, the increased absorption from the gut will be there. The iron binding capacity also rises because you keep on giving iron also, that will be taken up by the mother and converted to hemoglobin. So here see the last point. So if the mother is anemic, automatically the oxygen supply to the fetus also becomes less, and the baby may go for say SGA or IUGR. Okay, no problem. So platelet count, I want to tell you, sometimes because of increased consumption, you may have sometimes what you call as the thrombocytopenia of pregnancy. Maybe we should not bother much about it unless it becomes pathological. Okay. See, iron metabolism, again you have to know, because iron is one of the major supplements that we have to give during pregnancy for a healthy mother and the baby, so that they don't go for severe anemia, failure for the mother, or IUGR or SGA for the baby. So only 10% is absorbed, and the slide tells you how much of iron you have to give daily. Okay. So see the extent. A non-menstruating woman 1 mg, but in the second half of pregnancy 6 to 7 mg you have to give. So that means what? 10% only is absorbed, means you have to give about 60 to 100 mg of iron. That is what is contained in our tablet. That is the ferrous fumarate tablet that is available in the government setup, 100 mg. Okay. So in the 10% only will be absorbed. So you only if you give 100, 10 will be absorbed. That is what we call as the prophylactic dose. Therapeutic means you have to give double, that you will be reading in the chapter called anemia complicating pregnancy. So 100 mg of iron we have to give. Next. Right. This is another important and interesting thing, because when you are interpreting the lab results, you should know this. So the protein actually, what happens is the globulins increase. So normally you know that the albumin is more than the globulin. Okay, 1.7 is to 1, like that the ratio will be. But in pregnancy, what happens is the ratio almost becomes 1 is to 1. Yes. See, you can see the change. 1.7 is to 1 becomes 1 is to 1 near term, because the globulins increase more than the albumin. Yes. Right. So another very, very, very important clinical point is pregnancy is a hypercoagulable state. Another protein, that is increased is fibrinogen. It increases very, very much. So a pregnant lady is very much prone for undergoing any clotting problem, especially if she is having some under existing problem like APLA and all that. During pregnancy, she can go for any thrombosis, including the CNS thrombosis in the brain and all that, because the fibrinogen increases. Now, one more thing, another thing is interpretation of ESR. As you know, the globulins and fibrinogen both have increased in pregnancy. So the ESR may be very high in pregnancy. It's not given here. But so when you don't look at the ESR of a pregnant lady, it will be high only. Don't think that she's having some inflammation or something. That is because of pregnancy only. So this is interpretation of the lab reports. Okay, so next comes the immunological function. So this is given too much in detail, but here what I want to tell you is actually there is suppression of the immune system during pregnancy. Okay, I think that is the bottom line. So basically the immune system is suppressed during pregnancy. Right, next comes the changes in the respiratory system. And here what happens is another interesting clinical point, what you have to note here is a pregnant lady several times may tell you that she is feeling really breathless. She is breathing fast. What are you supposed to tell her? Immediately, we should not think you are going to auscultate both the lung fields as well as the heart sounds and everything. See if she is having any problem. But immediately don't panic and go for an echo and an opinion and all that. The thing is that during pregnancy, see the pregnant uterus is pressing on the diaphragm. So the lung is pushed sideward. So that itself is compressing the lung one. But even more important is the hormone progesterone is a great stimulant of the respiratory center. Now, because it is stimulating the respiratory center, this patient, pregnant ladies, sometimes they feel really breathless. So what can you do about it? You just ask her to be calm, take a deep breath and sit down. Usually it passes off. So why is the respiratory rate and other things increased during pregnancy? Again, because she has to take in more oxygen for herself and the baby, and also give out the carbon dioxide of the baby as well as her own carbon dioxide. So all the parameters will increase. And finally, what happens is there is a mild respiratory alkalosis is what you find in the blood. When you take the blood and suppose you do an ABG and C, that is what you are going to see. And since the no, yeah, you can go. Since the nose is also, part of the respiratory system, lot of patients may have epistaxis because the mucosa everywhere, all over the body, the mucosa is extremely congested. So she may have nasal stuffiness. She may say, doctor, I have some kind of stuffiness in the nose, or she may even have some epistaxis. So once again, you should not think that it is a disease. So first you have to rule out, be very sure that there are no polyps or anything. Then finally, you think there is nothing else. You have to reassure her and tell her that it can happen during pregnancy. So you see there is see the slide, there is increase in the respiratory rate, tidal volume, and everything increases. So there is mild respiratory alkalosis. Okay. Right. So coming to the nervous system, another thing, this patient may come and tell you she has some tingling sensation in her fingers and all. So that is nothing but the carpal tunnel syndrome resulting from the edema near the your wrist. Okay. So she may have headaches again due to the vascular changes. So how do you get a headache actually? Because of vasodilatation in the brain, right? So again, the same thing may happen here. She may have a lot of mood swings also. Sometimes bordering almost on psychosis. Okay. So the tingling sensation is the most important, I think, because it may be quite common. Okay. Go back. So see the last point in this slide. Here, the headache becomes very important. Suppose it is persistent and it is also associated with an increase in the BP or any visual change, because then you will have to think of preeclampsia. So don't miss that. So when a patient complains of headache, you have to look at so many things, including her vision and everything. And please check her BP also. Any pregnant lady complaining of headache, check the BP, rule out there is no preeclampsia, and probably finally you can just tell her, reassure her that it may be normal. Right. This is another important thing. Everything is important actually, all the systems, gastrointestinal change. So here patient may come and show that she has a bleeding gum. So again, mucosa, congestion, gums, they become hypertrophied, congested. So easily when they put the toothbrush in the morning, easily it can bleed. Again, it is because of the congestion. Then. And what happens, there is taste is very much altered. She may not like, she may have liked some dish very much when she was non-pregnant. Suddenly she doesn't like it at all because the taste buds, everything is altered, so she may not like it at all. Then another thing, the esophageal sphincter, again everything is loose in the body because of progesterone. So the stomach contents, they tend to come into the esophagus, so she may have heartburn, and the emptying time, no, the gastric emptying time also increases. So because of all, and so what do you actually tell the pregnant lady how to eat? The first thing you tell is she has to take easily digestible non-spicy food, and she should not stuff her stomach fully. Instead, she should have small split meals like how you advise a diabetic to eat. Same thing you can tell here also, so that she doesn't suffer from all this. The same thing, because the entire GIT, all the smooth muscles are relaxed, she may go in for constipation, which is a common complaint. Ask her to drink more water, take more of fibrous food, and in case with all that it doesn't come, then you have to give her some thing to relieve her constipation. Again, another important thing, see the last one, that is hemorrhoids. So as you know, the lower part of the body, everywhere she can have varicosity, she can have hemorrhoids. They are all one and the same. That is because of the venous stasis. All of them come under the same category. That is because of the gravid uterus, which is not letting the venous return to the optimal level. So they may have hemorrhoids, they will have varicosities of the vulva, and they can have the leg varicosities also may become bad. Yes, yes, please go back one more. Another important point, emesis gravidarum. So all of you know, even in the movies, the first thing they show when the heroine is pregnant is she vomits, isn't it? So the nausea and vomiting can vary from person to person. And it may either be very mild or it can be severe. When you call it, when it is severe and it is there almost the whole day, she's not able to retain anything, then you call it as hyperemesis gravidarum. Otherwise, it is just called as emesis gravidarum. Similarly, in the colloquial term, we call it as morning sickness. But it's not necessary that all of them have to have nausea and vomiting only in the morning. Some ladies almost regularly, they may even have it in the evenings. Or some may have the whole day when it is called as hyperemesis. You have to give them IV fluids. Right, liver. So here I would say only one thing. When you look at the liver function test, alkaline phosphatase is an important component of the liver function test because the placenta is an important source of alkaline phosphatase. It may be extremely raised. So a pregnant lady with alkaline phosphatase raised, that doesn't mean that she is having some problem in the liver or she is having some stasis in the liver. It is because of the increased production by the placenta. So here again, the physiological change of pregnancy, unless you are aware, you will think that it is abnormal. Otherwise, there is not much of a change. As I told you, albumin globulin ratio 1:1 it becomes. Okay, gallbladder again the same thing. It is not contracting. It is totally relaxed. So increased because of stasis, increased tendency to stone formation may be there. Yeah, this is again very important, especially when you are going to interpret the renal function test. So as you know, the blood flow to all the organs of the body increases. So in the kidney, the GFR is increasing, and as the trimesters advance, the increase is also more. So what happens is more blood is going, it is washing out everything. So the serum creatinine will be quite low in pregnancy. So what is normal for a non-pregnant may even be high for a pregnant lady. So this is how, this is what you have to know how you are going to interpret the renal function test. Okay, so anatomically what happens? Now because the ureter and the urinary bladder, they are friends of the obstetrician and the gynecologist, even while doing surgery and almost all the times. So what all happens? The ureter can get kinked because of the growing uterus. So what happens is you may have some hydronephrosis in the kidney. There may be stasis of urine may be there because of the compression of the gravid uterus on the ureter. Apart from that, what happens is the main thing is in the first trimester of pregnancy, this patient will come and tell you, I feel like passing urine very often. So immediately what happens is we start thinking in terms of infection. Maybe she's having some infection, but it is not due to that because in the first trimester, she feels very thirsty because there is increased, suddenly the blood flow to the kidney increases, all your renin-angiotensin system, everything gets activated. So what happens is there is more loss of the osmoregulation is reset. So what happens is she feels very thirsty, she takes more water, more urine is formed. That is one reason. Another reason is that the gravid uterus, no, up to 12 weeks, it is still within the pelvis. So it is pressing on the urinary bladder. So all these things will make her want to pass more urine in the first trimester. The same thing happens again towards the end. When near term, what happens when the head descends into the pelvis once again, it will compress on the bladder, causing her the sensation of passing. Frequently, she wants to pass urine. So these may be some of the physiological changes and an explanation for increased urinary frequency in pregnancy. Usually in the mid trimester, the patient doesn't have much of these complaints actually. Right, so the dilatation of the ureter, that's what is given there. And you know that anytime the urine stasis is there, naturally she may be, it may go in for infection. Okay, next. Mm, okay, I don't think people can remember that much. So thyroid, I just want to tell you this. There is increased need for the thyroxine hormone for the growth of the baby, especially in the first trimester. I think it's a very important. So as soon as the lady, you are confirming pregnancy, in the chapter called as antenatal care, you have to, as a part of her workup, when you are seeing the sugar and all that, you have to see the thyroid function test also. And in case she is hypothyroid, you have to give a proper supplement from outside because it is necessary for the metabolism. Thyroid hormone, as you know, is necessary for proper functioning right from top to bottom and also necessary for the baby to grow. Okay, next. So this is just showing you in a nutshell what all happens to various organs. And I think here the thyroid is the most important one. Other things, well, okay. Next. Okay. So here comes the finally the metabolic. What is that sound there? No, no, you can't do anything. You sit. Are you able to hear?
Yes,
What is
ma'am.
that? Okay, because there is some background noise here, which is terrible. If you're able to listen to me, that's fine. So see the leg of that, see the picture on the screen. See, look at the leg of that pregnant lady, how it is. Somebody has pressed it. So there is the pedal edema. So metabolic changes, what happens is the basal metabolic rate increases in the body because of all the changes. Okay. So what happens? The patient will have a lot of sweating. She may feel breathless. So she may be feeling very hot also, and then there is water retention will be there, so there is edema of the ankles and the legs. So that is why nowadays edema is not taken as previously. We used to read pedal edema as one of the signs of preeclampsia, but edema being a common feature in pregnancy only when it is pathological and it is not reducing even after rest, or it is found in non-dependent areas like the sacrum or the abdomen, then we take it to be pathological. Otherwise, pedal edema usually it subsides with rest. So you ask her to see after she lies down the whole night in the morning whether she's still having that edema or it is going away. Okay, next. Okay, now comes the important one called as the, what is it? Mosquito. So the carbohydrate metabolism is extremely important. We give a lot of importance to the oral glucose challenge test, right?
Stop.
Okay, he has gone. So we'll continue. That noise has gone down. So we'll continue. So please remember that pregnancy is a state where it is very, very imperative that the mother's blood glucose should remain high, because she is going to transfer all that sugar to the baby. So through the mother, the baby is going to get. So the glucose level has to remain high. So what happens during when the mother is fasting? See, a normal person will not go for hypoglycemia because there are so many compensatory mechanisms. I mean, a non-pregnant person. But a pregnant lady, if she is not eating frequently on time, can go for hypoglycemia called as fasting hypoglycemia, because her glucose is being taken up with it. The baby is going to take all her glucose. Now, when she eats, what happens? Postprandial hyperglycemia. Why does that happen? That is because all the pregnancy hormones are anti-insulin, because they want the glucose to first go to the baby rather than being used by the mother. So what happens? You have postprandial hyperglycemia. So this hyperglycemia, what happens? It is going to trigger the more of the insulin. There is a state of insulin resistance because of all the anti-insulin hormones. So postprandial hyperglycemia, because they are not letting the insulin act. So the insulin is going to increase. So there is hyperinsulinemia also. So this is something that you have to remember. So suppose this sort of a pregnant lady has got a genetic predisposition or any risk factor for developing diabetes like obesity, there, or she has conceived after polycystic ovarian syndrome treatment, then these sort of people may go for gestational diabetes mellitus, because there is a very thin line dividing the normal glucose metabolism from the abnormal in a pregnant lady, and all these changes are there so that the fetus gets adequate glucose. So this is what is given here. And how do you test? Suppose you are doing a fasting and postprandial blood glucose test, and that turns out to be normal, and you want to find out whether this lady is actually, is she prone for getting gestational diabetes? whether it is just lying there latently to come back later. So what you have to do, you have to give her the oral glucose challenge test. That will be taken in the chapter called GDM. When they are taking, they will tell you. Yes. And when she, suppose this lady goes on fasting, what happens? How does the fetus get the glucose? Naturally, by lipid metabolism, free fatty acids are mobilized. So she may even become ketogenic very easily. Right. Okay, next. Okay, so protein metabolism, there is a positive nitrogen balance. So protein is deposited everywhere because both the fetus, placenta, everything, all of them require the protein. Next. Okay, so there is a fat deposition again because of hyperinsulinemia. There is fat deposition in all parts of the body. Okay. So again, calcium is another important mineral which is required. You have to supplement it sometimes from outside or by giving a good diet rich in calcium, because the baby's skeletal system will be taking up the mother's calcium, and the mother will be, her bones are going to become weak, right? The baby is basically like a parasite. You have to remember that. So to compensate for that, the mother has to take everything more. Okay, so this I told you, no, not so much in detail. Right. So finally, that baby is there. The parasite is lying there looking at all of you. So please remember all the physiological changes so that when the patient comes and asks you, you are not taken aback without knowing what to answer. You have to give her a proper answer rather than tell her that this is a disease and you have to do all these investigations and all that. So please read up this chapter well. With that, we'll sign off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Thank you,
please
ma'am.
do remain in the call. Take the attendance.
Let
and
me check how many have come. Show me. I want to see.
220 are there.
220. Very good. How did you find 220?
Here it's been 220.
But all of them are awake.
No idea.
Any method to find that out? How many of them are actually sitting and seeing or putting it on and walking off? Okay. Thanks
Okay.
a lot, Sarath. Thank you.
Thank you.
ஓகேப்பா, நம்மளால
Thank you,
இதெல்லாம்
sir.
வீட்ல எல்லாம் போட்டுலாம் பண்ண முடியாது.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Please do remain. I will inform after taking attendance. You can all leave.
Also, I think we can continue medicine class in the same link.
Okay, fine.
Ma'am is asking the link.
Yeah, Vaishnavi,
10
send the
minutes
same
முன்னாடி
link.
கேட்டுட்டாங்க.
Send the
Okay,
same link,
okay,
ma'am.
Okay.
Same link. Okay.
Ah,
So
You send the link.
okay.